Welcome to 11 verse 11. We're back. I'm Adam Turner. We got some special guests with us. We got Chris from Football Report. We got Eldon Hasic here, and we got Mr. Calcio. As always, we're ready to debate, discuss, and break down all the hot topics in the USMNT and soccer world. All right. Hey, we're ready to jump in. So first of all, let's introduce our guests. Chris from Football Report. Man, who are you? How'd you get into USMNT? Give us a little bit of background about yourself.
Well, I just did a lot of youth football scouting on Twitter, and from the U.S., so it was mostly U.S. men's national team players, and I got into football because I played it since I was a kid. So
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So with the youth scouting stuff, what kind of like drew you into that? What was it like about? And like, how are you watching games too?
I have to use like a VPN to get different streams, and
Nice.
also have to have different services. I have like 6 subscriptions. So
That's
And
awesome.
I have a question. Did you create the clown on the Berhalter
yes,
meme? Because that's been going all around USMT Twitter. I wanted to make sure that I was giving you the right credit for that.
yeah, I did.
Nice. Now we know where we can credit back to. So cool, man. Well, hey, listen, glad to have you. And yeah, really excited to talk some soccer with you, man. And our second guest, you've probably been in a soccer argument with him on Twitter. Twitter at some point. I feel like we all have, but great arguments, great discussions. Eldon, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. What's your background? Where are you from? Where's the passion for USMNT come from?
So I guess my background for soccer comes from my childhood. I was born in Bosnia. So my family emigrated when I was 9. So when I was a kid growing up in Bosnia, Brazilian Ronaldo was, like he was the phenomenon. And so that's how I
The
started.
real Ronaldo.
Yeah.
Ronaldo.
Right.
Best
The
one.
OG, the only Ronaldo. So I'm getting all the, anti Cristiano tweets at us right now. But no, I played, soccer as a kid in Bosnia. And then, when I immigrated here, it was basically like 5th grade, and, grew up in Indiana where soccer wasn't that popular, and it's hard to follow the game at that point. I mean, I remember, going on like websites and following like Serie A and, the Bosnian national team on like, message boards and stuff like that, obviously it's a lot better now. And then, I eventually started following the U.S. team as well. I followed a little bit in the 02 World Cup, but I couldn't really watch many of the games. But I think I'd say I've been following the team very seriously since maybe 09, 08 with the Bob Bradley Confederations Cup run and all that. But I haven't really been involved online until recently. It was just kind of like a pandemic thing. I knew about USMNT Twitter, wasn't really posting on it, and then just a few months ago just kind of started getting involved, and like you said, arguing with you. I don't start with the idea that I want to just get in debates and argue with people, but
That's all right.
I'm an attorney by trade, so just I do.
You know what I noticed when I joined the USMT community, and I love was at first it comes across as extremely friendly community, right? Everyone's like, yes, we love the US, and like you're starting to follow it. And then it takes you till you get to your first thread, and then when you've got a very strong opposite opinion of someone else, and then you learn the real that people have harsh opinions, and as long as you're agreeing with I guess the thread and what the story that's going on in that thread that you're following, everything's fine. So I remember my first one when I was like, no, I completely disagree, and everyone was like, what the hell?
What?
Yeah, like wait, what are you talking about? No, he sucks. I was like, well, Jesus, all right. I thought everyone was really nice here.
Well, and that's like a part of the reason we wanted to do this show when Cal and I kind of got together pre-Christmas last year was like, a lot of this is like your goal. I think you guys are guests maybe like 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 is just to like get as many people on here so we can like see that we're like human beings. I think Spaces does that a lot too, right? When you get on Spaces, I disagree with people that are on like the First Touch space a lot, and I've argued with them, but we're like at least talking to each other. So it typically isn't like I have heard some pretty intense arguments on there, but like normally it's just like, normal banter, right? That you would have with your friends when you're kind of talking. Sometimes Twitter gets like harsh and like way too intense and personal. And I'm like, easy guys, we're like talking soccer here. We disagree a little bit. No worries. You're not a moron and I'm not a moron because we, think differently about this stuff. So,
and none of us are actually experts either. It's like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We're experts to a certain point. So I think
we're all amateur experts if you want to put it that way. But hey, listen, we're pumped to have both of you guys on. Just so everybody out there knows, there is 100% going to be a Serie A lean to this pod and to this into this show. So dig in, don't turn off, right? Dig in. We're definitely going to have the USMNT lean to it as well, and I think those two things are really starting to fuse, right? Serie A and USMNT. I feel like over the last 12 months are starting to come together in a pretty unique way, right? With some ownership changes and players.
I was just about to say one of the biggest things has been the ownership. So now between obviously Roma, Fiorentina, Milan, Genoa, Spezia, Venezia, like I'm sure I'm missing one because there's just so many. Sorry, Atalanta now.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy that. And, there was always even before there was actually American ownership for Milan. I remember Galliani, if you guys remember the sporting director back in the day for Milan under Berlusconi, he said, hey, we want to make sure we get an American player. And I don't know if you guys remember, but they had Gooch, right? They had him
for one season training.
He got schooled by Milito during the summer, what's it called? Like preseason. And then got into a fight with Zlatan and then basically was gone from the team. Got like literally no playing time. Like I've never seen any player get that little playing time. And they haven't really gotten one back, but they've always, I think part of the Serie A is like they do want to have American players there. They love the marketing angle. I'm not saying, I think a lot of people thought McKennie going to Juve was a marketing type of thing. But, he ended up, being very impactful. But they do like that fact that they can get American players in, and there's going to be this attraction to Italian soccer in the States because obviously the Premiership is massive in the U.S. and they love to eat some of that.
Hey, Eldon, why do you think that? Like, where's it coming from? Like, why are we getting more owners in Serie A specifically? Like, what do you think?
Well, I mean, Italian clubs have financial problems. I think that's just kind of a fact we have to recognize.
And Americans love taking advantage of people with financial problems.
Well, I don't think it's that, but no. I think that just when I started following, the Italian league, it was still in the heyday of the 90s, and Serie A was like the NBA almost. I mean, all the stars were there. And I think now with COVID and just the general decline, the lack of TV money, all that kind of stuff, you've got this big gap between the Premier League and the other top 5 leagues. But I think I'm not sure why all the owners are coming in, but like it makes sense for clubs to look at the American market because the American player is emerging and is relatively cheap.
Yeah.
So I think there's some money ball kind of aspect to it a little bit. And if you find a player that hits, if you can sell a few jerseys, that might, that makes sense. People kind of talk about the marketing angle a lot or try to use that to discredit the players, but it only really works if you hit both.
Yeah.
You're not going to sell jerseys if the guy isn't good enough to be on the team and doesn't get on the field. So you kind of got to have to hit both.
Agreed.
Yeah. So, hey, let's jump in. So, we're going to jump into our first segment. We call it the brace, right? We got 2 topics, just like there's 2 goals in a brace. And we are going to dive pretty deep on these 2 topics. And topic 1, I think, is the biggest topic that's out there right now. It's the one that probably concerns us the most. It's created definitely the biggest wrinkle heading into this next and final window. And that's the injury of Weston McKennie. And so let's start with the USMNT angle here. How does it impact us, right? Chris, I'd love to hear from you here. What do you think going into this next window is the biggest, impact of losing Weston McKennie? And gosh, how do we make up for it?
Well, we're kind of terrible at creating chances and scoring them lately. We don't score a lot, and he's probably our best midfielder for scoring goals. Good header from set pieces. He creates chances, and we really don't get that out of any other midfielder to that level.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing that jumps out of me about saying that is Weston is not only the guy who's a creator and can get the pass, but he's someone who hypes up the team, gets into people's faces. He creates chances, but he's also dynamic on both sides of the pitch, right? So he can be great defensively for the team. He tracks back, he pushes forward, he does things, and he does it for Juve too. But at the US level, he can create things out of nothing, right? He can put in a cross. He can go into the box. He can, add on from a set piece point of view. So for me, it's the biggest loss that you could possibly have. Although probably one of the big issues with the U.S. is if you take any of our starters out, maybe Musa, but at least Adams and McKennie. Even though I feel like McKennie's more important than Adams.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't have the one like for like somebody can go in and just automatically replace them and you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I was feeling relatively speaking, I was feeling good about this window once we got the Reina news that it wasn't going to be a 6-month injury. And so the big question mark, I think, on what happens is whether Reina can play at all. Like, I'm hopeful we can, with McKennie out, I'm hopeful we can have Reina at least as a super sub, because I think the obvious problem of our team is that we just don't create enough. We're too predictable. We're too slow in build up. And so we don't create enough chances. And so that's where Weston has emerged as our best player, because he's good on set pieces and because he's willing to try stuff. And, it's just very dynamic. And so he can, even when we're kind of very predictable and prodding, Weston can do something and, we can squeeze out a goal or, get a shot off. And so with him gone, I think it make our worst tendencies kind of, go back to the forefront. So I'll feel better if we see Reina play a couple of games for Dortmund and make the, make the roster. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that, really, really worried about Reina's injury history. And so I think there's a good take to just say maybe he should just kind of sit out till he's completely healthy. But, I don't want to risk anything in qualification. So if if he can play 30 minutes in these games, I'd want him to play 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything you guys said. I think the thing I would add is it's almost like, value above replacement, right? I think that's what you were kind of getting at, Cal, right? It's like, I think at this point, I thought Adams probably was the most important player, but I think actually we've seen enough out of Acosta in small samples, right? I still don't feel that good if he's starting a big game, but I at least think there's a chance that he can, have a performance in a big game because we've seen it. But we have literally not seen any eights other than Musa and McKennie have a big performance in a big game. And we've invested a massive amount of those minutes into Lletget and Acosta over the last, 16 months, right? Going back to the COVID restart in that first window. It's in Lletget and Acosta primarily, other than McKennie and Musa, right? So those are the guys. And we have nobody else who's proven, right? I'm sure we'll get into this at some point because Cal loves talking about Luka. But it's true, right? I agree, Luka's not proven. I like Luka. You guys probably know that if you've followed me at all. I have faith that Luka can be a good player for us. But one thing I've said on this show is I'm not sure he can be a good player for us against Mexico, right? I said that, Cal, multiple times. I was like, he's a good rotational guy. I think he's totally fine as hey, let's sub him in 1 out of 3 games in a window against, one of the lower quality teams. But can Luka do it against, a higher level team? I don't know. That's totally unproven. I'd like to see it, but I don't know. And so who do we play, right? I saw, Cal, you put out today, I probably put Acosta and Musa with Adams behind them. I don't feel good about that at all. I think that brings out all of the worst traits of us offensively.
Well, just to be clear, I said I think that's what Greg's going to do. I didn't say.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I mean,
he definitely, he definitely might, and that's really worrisome to me. How do you guys feel about that? If we see Acosta at the 8,
I don't want to see. To be honest, I think you're right. I think if he's going into this game, the calls. I think if Adams and Musa are healthy, those two guys are 100% starting. So it's who's that guy who's going to replace McKennie in that 8 position. Now, it depends on how he looks at it, right? So
let's all, before you keep going, let's also just imagine, because I agree with you, Eldon. Like, if Reyna's healthy and can go, he has to see as many minutes there as he possibly can, right? Given the injury. So I agree with that. But like, let's just imagine he's not ready to go, which is a very real possibility.
Reyna's not. Yeah. I don't think he's. I agree with everyone. I don't think Reyna's. I'm not even sure he's going to get called up. But anyways, we can get to that later. But I feel like he has to think about what he wants to do. So if he wants to play the first half and maybe try to get more possession, right? Get a little bit more possession and then push it up to a Pulisic who hopefully is going to be in good form, right? He could play a Ferreira in the 9 position, creating some flair up top, and maybe he's going to go with Busio. I mean, Busio was probably the first player off of the bench, either him or Acosta, before he got COVID and before the last window, right? If he would have gotten called, he was one of the first people off the bench. So I think Busio is going to be an option there. He's obviously not a direct McKennie replacement. I think we've realized there's no McKennie replacement. I would like to see Mihailovic, but I don't feel like he's ready to start. I feel like he could be a sub that comes off the bench, just because he hasn't started a big game, ever for us, and he hasn't been part of the window. So I think he has to start and go in. He has to go in there. The other person's Luka. I don't know if you can have both Luka and Musa on the pitch that are kind of like, because McKennie's good because he's got that discipline. They can go back and forth. Even though we saw flashes of that of Luka, I do not consider Luka a top like a defending type of midfielder. Musa's decent defensively, but he's better going forward. So it's going to depend on how Greg is going to approach it. I don't know, Chris, we always go back and forth on this a million times. What's your take?
Well, I'm thinking that he's going to probably, it seems like the Jet's done, right? So I'm thinking it's going to be,
yeah. Well, he might be like one, MLS, debut, Revolution debut goal from starting, but
but I think he said something to Greg because he doesn't seem to be getting along with him. So I think it's going to be either Busio or Luka, probably. I think Acosta's basically shown that he's just a 6. If Greg doesn't see that yet, then we won't win or even draw any of these games.
Eldon, what are your thoughts on kind of like the McKennie replacement, right? Like, if it's not Reyna, who would you like to see fill those minutes this window?
So the way I would approach it is that, like, to qualify, we need 4 points. And I don't want to leave anything to the last game because that would be a crapshoot. And so I think how we replace McKennie differs from game to game. So I think against Mexico, my overarching strategy would just be to play as many high-energy pressing counterattacking players as possible. And so I think that would probably mean Adams, Musa, Aronson, Pulisic, Weah, maybe even Sargent as a 9, just because Sargent covers a ton of ground. Or Pepe starts, but you bring Sargent off the bench. I think Sargent might be the one guy who's been outside of the squad that makes it back. And I think that lineup, I think we match up well with Mexico. So I think having a very high pressing, high energy lineup, if we can play that way and counterattack, maybe we get a goal and get out of Azteca with a point, maybe even all 3. I mean, the one thing about Greg, I criticize him a lot, but he does do well against Mexico, and I think it's because we match up well against Mexico because their midfield is getting older. Jimenez was, after his energy, is not the same player, and obviously their fullbacks are, especially if he goes kind of with Chaka and Gallardo, like their fullbacks are vulnerable. So that would be what I would want to do for Mexico, is probably Aronson at the 8, or whatever, 8-10. And then Moose on the other side, Adams, because I think that those would be the three highest pressing players that I can think of that can play in the midfield. And then, if Adams gets a yellow card, it is what it is. Like I think we need to try. We can't just go to Mexico and just take an L. I think we have to try to get a point because it could really make the difference. And then once we get to Panama, I think we're going to need quality in the midfield. I think how Panama approaches the game might depend on what happens in the first, in the first game, because that's the second one. So where they're at, if a draw is good for them, they'll play more defensively. If they have to go all out, and they're away, so they'll still try to probably counterattack. But I think we would need either De La Torre or Buzio, just someone that can carry the ball. I think Buzio has better passing grades. De La Torre has better dribbling, so it kind of depends on what you prefer. But I think it could be one of those situations where you start one and then bring the other one off the bench. So I'd say it's probably those two guys. I don't want Leggett. I don't want Acosta as an 8. I like Acosta as a backup 6. I think he gets a bad rap. I think his real problem is he can't play on the turn. But as a 6, he can spray the ball a little bit. He can take set pieces.
And especially when the game's in front of him, right? Like, right. I think that's what we've seen is, or if you're, honestly, if you're going to bunker, like, which is what we did in the Gold Cup, he's fine for that as well, right? If you're pretty much going to bunker and give up a lot of possession, he's going to be gritty. If the game's in front of him and it's like he doesn't need to make quick decisions, like you said, on the turn or just like quick outlet passes, that's where even at the 6, he's gotten in trouble when the game starts to speed up a little bit. So
yeah, if he gets pressed as a 6, I think we'd be in trouble. But I mean, Costa Rica is kind of an older team, so I think he'd probably be fine there. And Panama, I feel like I need to watch a little more of Panama. They've done well, so I don't want to just say they do play, and they've got a good coach. They're well organized.
But I think your strategy is right, though. I think you play your best team against Mexico. You try to get your best result, and if you get a win, which unlikely but possible, if you get a draw, I think that's a good result. And I think even if you lose Adam, like the team with Acosta at the 6 and the players that we have at home, you'd think that we'd be able to get a win there. So
you can't punt. I totally agree, Eldon. You cannot punt a game. It's just like it's too late and we need points. And I get the Adams thing, right? There's a lot of arguments out there, like not having Adams and not having, and it's a total. If Chris, if you have this argument, make it because it's a legit one, right? Like if you don't have Adams and McKennie, we don't actually need 4 points technically. 3 points can get it done, right? Like I get that Costa Rica could have a 9-point window, but there's also a chance Costa Rica loses the first game. Like
they're playing Canada, who've done well. So
that's what I'm saying. So like, there's a chance that we go into the second game and it's like, actually, all we need to do is win this game. Like, I actually think there's a decently high chance that happens. And what would be a disaster, right? I'll just put it out there to play devil's advocate. I agree with you. I'm playing Adams against Mexico. But having no Adams and no McKennie going against Panama, we've seen what an atrocious midfield is against Panama. We've seen what Acosta and shaky 8s is against Panama. We had Acosta and Musa in that game, right? Plus Leggett in the Panama game. That's what we played. And I get that like Buzio or De La Torre are better, or Aronson at the 8's better, but that's one midfielder that's better than the lineup we put out there. So I would be worried about that. I want to get back real quick just to how I would approach playing against Mexico specifically. We have to replicate the game. The game plan we had against them was utterly perfect, I thought. It was, essentially, hey, we're going to possess a little bit, but more, we're just going to beat you up, winning second balls, counter pressing you when we turn it over, pressing you when you have the rock, and we're just going to create havoc. And you can't really play through us because your guys are older and they wore down, especially later in the game. I think that's where we saw the age come out, right? So I'm totally with you, Eldon, on I don't know if Aronson's the right guy for that. I think he can be. I just don't know. The only performance we've seen at the 8 for him with the USMNT, he was pretty bad. But it was a long time ago. So I wouldn't rule it out. To be honest, it seems like as good of a solution as anyone else at this point. So I don't have like a firm answer of who I want at that 8. I'll be honest. Like I go back and forth. I'm like, could be De La Torre, could be Buzio. Like Buzio is actually a no for me here because I just don't think he plays with enough energy. I don't know actually enough about De La Torre's pressing skills. He's an energetic guy, but I don't know if he can do that.
He does cover a lot of ground, I think.
Yeah,
He does. Yeah. I feel like he could do well, right? It's all hypothetical. But Chris, what do you think here? Any thoughts here on, who's going to fill in or what the tactics should be against Mexico?
well, I feel like the main problem here is that we don't have the depth to cover the way our midfield is. So we're just gonna have to try and replicate the game plan from last time. And Adams has to play, so we have to deal with it if he gets a card.
And Cal, you mentioned Georgie, and I've ranted about this for 3 days, so I'll just put it out there on our pod because that's what we do. I just am still really, and I people have complained back at me a million times over the last year for saying this. We haven't invested in the right people at the 8, and I get you just get it wrong sometimes as a coach, but we've just gotten it wrong. And we needed, I think the coaching staff and the players have needed all of these guys we're talking about to get reps, to get reps with the team and with the group. And we don't have anybody who any of us feel comfortable with, this group at the 8. We talked Aronson, it's one game I remember. De La Torre, it's, is it even 90 minutes, maybe a little over 90 minutes? Busio, it's a little bit more with Busio, but it's not that much. So that's the one thing that's been really.
Well, I would say 2 things. So first, I would say that's kind of how the U.S. has been for a while, though, right? We didn't have. I mean, we're a very reactive fan base and team. So our 9s weren't working. Pepe played 1 game. He scored 2 goals, and then we were like, all right, we're done. We're good with our 9. He's our guy. Let's not worry about it. Then he stopped scoring. Oh shit, Sargent scored a goal. Let's bring him back in. We saw. So same thing. Luca didn't get any game time, and then he played against Honduras. It's all right, finally now. All right, we've got 10 backup. We've got Luca. We're good. We're good to go. So based on this, if Jordi comes in and all of a sudden, right now I would say of all the 8s, he's the guy who I think he's the most talked about to join the team now, right? I feel like we've gone through Luca.
What's it? 2 questions real quick.
Yeah.
What's his press work rate? And what's his defensive work rate? I've watched a decent amount of him with Montreal. He just plays the 10, basically.
Yeah, he is a 10. He's a 10.
No, I'm not. I wasn't even vouching. I was saying I kind of want to see him come off the bench because he's he's obviously an attacking player, right?
Those are my question marks for him, though. Is he even an 8 in our system? Would be my big question.
I don't. I mean, I personally, I don't listen. I'm a Busio fan because I think I see him as a very tactical player that knows how to move, can get spaces, and can make a good pass and can do a good ball. We have to continue seeing more of him. My whole point is, though, we haven't tried. I think to your point is we haven't tried a lot of players, right? And are rotating that we went too far on Roldan and Leggett, and we've tried Acosta, and it just didn't work out. We had McKennie and Musa. We all feel good about that, and haven't had enough chance with everyone else. I'm just saying is the way the U.S. has played. If one guy comes in and has a good game, I think we're all it's possible. It can happen very easily, right? Yeah. So let's see what happens. The one thing I wanted to see for 1 second though is because we were talking about Mexico is I just want to remind everyone every game that we beat Mexico this year last year we could have lost very easily. So if you look at the Nations League final, we could have been down if it wasn't for VAR. We could have been down 2-0. And we were getting destroyed those first 15, 20 minutes, right? That VAR disallowed goal, changed the game in that set play, right? Against Gold Cup, Mexico definitely had much more chances than we did up until the goal that Robinson. And then if we go to the game this last week, that first half, I thought was pretty equal. And Lozano and Corona both had huge chances. Again, those go in. Completely different game. The second half we completely dominated and we came off the block and we played better. But against Mexico, where we've never won ever during World Cup qualifying, we need luck on our side again. And as we've seen throughout USMNT, our luck ends up somehow always running out at the wrong time. So we're going to have to be very, very lucky, but also good versus Mexico. Eldon?
Yeah, the other thing I just kind of want to build off what you said is the first 2 of those games went to overtime. So they're technically draws if you think of them in qualifying terms. And once it goes to extra time, obviously we're the younger team, the fitter team. Maybe it's not less of a surprise that that we are able to win when Mexico's completely gassed. But that won't happen in Azteca. I mean, the game's played in March. It'll be 90 minutes. So, and
these guys are going to be motivated. They're going to be more motivated, arguably, than us.
They'll be under a lot of pressure too.
They're playing at home. They're not in they haven't been doing amazing lately. They've lost to us 3 times. Like, they're going to be more motivated on paper than we are technically, or potentially. It's arguably, right? But it's gonna be a tough match.
I mean, I'd say it kind of cuts both ways, because they'll be under a lot of pressure, just because it's kind of like us. I mean, Mexico probably has even more negativity around their team, and the coach is actually under real pressure. I mean, for us, it's the pressure on Berhalter is from 15 guys on Twitter.
Right.
In Mexico, it's a little, and I guess all of us are in that group. But so that's why I think it would be, if we can go to Mexico and press in the first 20, 30 minutes, and if we can score a goal, I think that the dynamics of that game could work in our favor. But yeah, I mean, I'm under no illusions. I mean, Mexico still has quality, even though they're not what they were 2-3 years ago. But they can still beat us 2-3-0, 2-1. I mean, that can easily happen. Even though, but just one thing that we talked about earlier, I wanted to bring up before I forget. Like, one thing that I think we need to kind of think about is that we need to have a set piece taker on the field. I think that's one of the lessons from kind of the Honduras game is Acosta did well, with the corner kicks.
We got Pulisic's taking Chelsea's set pieces now.
But that's the one thing where I kind of like Bucio in the Panama game.
Yeah.
Is if Adams is playing, then you don't have, if Adams is suspended, then Acosta can. I'd like to have 2 set piece takers on the field at once, because I don't like the situation where it's Pulisic, taking 10 corners in a row, and if he doesn't have it, then we're not doing anything.
Speaking from a man with a Venezia jersey on, for anyone who's listening to this on the
Great
podcast.
jersey, beautiful jersey.
Boozy on the back.
Yeah.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm gonna move us on. Listen, I'm excited to see what we do with it. I'm nervous to see what we do with it. I think we all are. And I'm just gonna knock on wood that we get the game of someone's life. That's what we need, really. Is we need the game of someone's life, and maybe a career-defining game for a couple of these guys, which would be pretty cool. But topic 2 in the brace is just Serie A, man. Just let's talk some Serie A now. Let's talk top 4. It's really the only title race, I guess. Premier League looks like it could potentially be back in action with Liverpool getting hot, but it's really the race of the top 5 leagues, in my opinion, where you have really 3 teams very much within touching distance in Milan and Inter, and I think Napoli 2 points behind. So you've got an incredible race there. You've got obviously the most historic club fighting for Champions League place. And then you have the Italian American club in Venezia fighting for a relegation spot. So let's start just with the Scudetto, and I'm going to default to you, Cal, to kick it off. Who's winning the Scudetto this year?
Man, so I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm a Milanista. I'm a Milan fan. So I think my gut tells me Inter, because I feel like they have the winning mentality. They won last year. They had a little chip on their shoulder, and everyone was counting them out when they lost Lukaku and Hakimi. And they managed to, play really good football. And, they've been a little bit unlucky with injuries and kind of Lautaro's drought. So my gut tells me Inter. My heart tells me Milan. I think Napoli is just too cynical to win the Scudetto. They've messed it up in the past when they've had the chance. I think that they're just going to get, they had a chance to get in the top 4 last season and managed to draw at home against Verona, where all they needed was a win and they would have been in the top 4 and Juve would have been out. So my gut tells me Inter is the more organized team. They've got a little bit of depth. They've got some injuries, but when Correa's back, their new signing Gosen's going to be good backup to Perisic. Sorry, Eldon. And I think I think they're a good team. I think Milan can also put it together. So my heart says that they can do it. They drop points needlessly, but I feel like they've also had a little problem with injuries. But I just feel like Inter is going to be the one that's going to be they're going to be at the top. I think people have talked about Juve getting in there. I actually think Juve have a chance to be third place because I feel like Napoli could easily, like I said, lose their head and somehow slip into fourth and maybe even slip out of the top four and have Atalanta come back in or something. So if I had to make a call right now and put money on it, I would put it on Inter winning the Scudetto, but my heart wants Milan to somehow come through because I think it would just give them so much confidence going into next season when they're going to get a couple more signings, and then maybe they can start getting competitive in Europe as well.
Chris, what do you got up top?
Same thing. Inter seems like the obvious choice because, well, Milan are unnecessarily dropping points, and Napoli are always a bottle job.
Wait, what team do you support, Chris?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. SSC Bari in the third tier. Yes. With it's the fourth largest stadium.
Yeah, I know. It was one of the 1990 World Cup stadiums. No, I wanted to ask you because who do you think if you had to predict 1 through 4, right? You got Inter 1, who's going to be 2, 3, and 4?
It's going to be Milan, Napoli, and I'm thinking Atalanta. I don't think Juve will do it with all their injuries.
Wow. That's bold. McKennie's that important, I guess.
Not just McKennie. Think about it. They had to play him out of position.
I feel like Serie A is like the intersection of your life. It's like where United States players and Baltic players come together here. So it's just like it really is, right? Like so many Croatian and I feel like Serbian, and it's such a great league to like. Why is that? Why is that? Just because it's close, like it's geographically close, that you get a lot of like Croatian players going there first?
That's a part of it. I mean, if you're in Croatia or Bosnia, you can drive to Italy. Northern Italy, you can get in a car. You can be there 3 or 4 hours depending where you're from. So I think that's a part of it. And I think the players from former Yugoslavia are appreciated in Italy. I think this goes back to. I'm sure you guys will heard some of these players, but like Savicevic, Zvonimir Boban, Siniša Mihajlovic, who's now a coach. I mean, these guys, when the war broke out in Yugoslavia, these guys made moves abroad, and a lot of them ended up in Italy, which was the strongest league at that time. And I think Italian clubs have kind of looked, for budget signings, in former Yugoslavia and other places ever since. And so there's always kind of a space for space there. And it's also that I think that the players from former Yugoslavia are usually very technical. They're tough. And I think those are kind of things that are appreciated in the Italian league. I think the style of play, I think, usually meshes.
And what do you got up top? Anything different than these guys? Are you going into as well?
Yeah. So I think the interesting thing is that, the big problem I think for Italian clubs is that they're not deep enough to fight on two fronts. And I think that's what you saw today. Napoli came up when Barcelona was kind of resurgent, but I mean, they were just swept off the park. Inter played well, but they don't have the bench, and so they couldn't score against Liverpool. You play well for 70 minutes, and then you lose 2-0, and I don't think anyone's hoping for a miracle that Inter somehow survives. Milan's already out because it had some refereeing issues, and then so basically the only Italian clubs that are left in Europe are the ones that are 4th and 5th, and that's Juventus and Atalanta. And I think whoever goes deeper in Europe, that can impact who finishes 4th. Because I think Juventus could, I would expect them to, make it through against Villarreal, but we'll see. Atalanta will be through at least, one more tie. So I think that, if we look at the top 3 and assume, none of them have any European games, they can prepare, 7 days for a game. I think under those circumstances, Inter is probably the, the deepest team and can, most likely to finish first, but it's so close. I'd like to see Milan win as well, just because it's Zlatan. I mean, I have a kind of a fandom for Zlatan, and so I'd like to see him, win a title at age 40. Although he hasn't really played much this year because of the injuries, but I think that will be what could really impact the race is that all these teams have been inconsistent. They've been inconsistent lately. They've been dropping points against smaller teams, and I think a lot of that has to do with their lack of depth. And so if they're out of Europe, that get in your you have a title on the line, I think they'll give them motivation and focus to play well every 7 days if they're not able to do it every 3. And as for Napoli, I think the one kind of X factor they might have is that Spalletti might be the most experienced manager of the 3. Inzaghi did well at Lazio, but he's never been in a title race. Spalletti's lost some title races, so maybe that's not maybe they're not the best factor for him. But I think I wouldn't count out Napoli completely. Although I'll concede that they didn't look good today at all.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Milan's out of all European competition right now.
Yeah, they finished 4th in their group. So they're out completely.
And I think, it seems like Inter's going to go out right now as well. So, maybe that won't be as big of an issue. I actually kind of thought for a while, I was like, you know what, if Inter can somehow get past, Liverpool, it actually hurts them when it comes to the Scudetto, right? Because you just start stacking fixtures on top of must-win game. What will become must-win games on the weekend. And I could see that helping Milan, even just in the next couple weeks, right? There's going to be a little more wear and tear on Inter. They're obviously really close, right? Milan beat Inter a couple weeks ago, I think, correct? That was kind of the big matchup, and it was a huge win. I think this is really going to be one of those things that comes down to the last couple weekends, though. Just watching, I don't watch as much as you guys, but the little I've watched, they seem evenly matched. To be honest, all 3 seem like they drop points at times, unnecessarily. So nobody, really seems flawless.
Well, that's what they were saying, because the last round, it was nobody wanted to win, because it was literally Milan dropped points, Inter then lost to Sassuolo, and then Napoli drew. Juve drew, but out of the top 3, none of them wanted to. And actually, even in the 4th, 5th, 6th position, nobody wanted to win. The only team that actually out of the Sette Sorelle that actually won ended up being Fiorentina.
Yeah, and I don't actually think that's going to change that. I don't think anybody's going to become Man City, I guess is my point. I don't think anybody's going to string off 8 straight, 3-point weekends. I just don't see that happening. So I think we're in for a really good ending. I guess that's my point, right? I don't see anybody putting a 6 to 8 point gap between them and the competition, which is good for us as fans, bad for you as a Milan fan, but good for us as fans.
But I like the Scudetto race, because I feel like, first of all, it makes it a little bit interesting, because, and not only that, but the teams at the top are, even if Inter won 2 in a row, there's a nice story with Inter winning, because it's they lost their best players, right? They brought in Inzaghi, and hey, they've actually been playing better. They haven't been playing great lately, but throughout the season, man, they looked really good, and they gave Liverpool a run for their money, But you're seeing teams now. Right now, we're going to either get a Milan and resurgent, kind of a new Inter, and then potentially Napoli. All 3 of those would be huge victories. Before, it was just Juve every year, and it was so predictable. They were just 10 times better than everyone else. Now it's even. Unfortunately, Juventus has gone down over the years, so everything's just a little bit more evenly matched.
Yeah, I think it's what could be great for the league is it could be the only interesting league race, right? For the last couple, it could be, right? That could be what happens. But hey, I have just one quick hitter question for you guys before we jump off Serie A, and it's this: does Venezia get relegated? And does Juve? I think Chris, you gave your opinion on this already. Does Juve make the Champions League spot? So, Eldon, what do you think about those 2 questions?
So one thing that might be kind of very interesting is that Venezia is tied with, and I always butcher the pronunciation, but Cagliari. Mm-hmm. They actually play in the very last game of the season.
Oh, wow.
So it could come to that. I looked at their schedules. I think Venezia might have a slightly easier schedule because they've already played the top 3 twice. But they'll still have to play Juventus, and they'll have to play some of the other bigger teams. But for the most part, Venezia is going to be playing the smaller teams and the mid-table teams. I think Cagliari is going to have a couple of games that are against the tougher opponents, and then at the end of the season they play against each other. And I'm just not sure who's the home team, but that might be like the one to watch. Is it, the outcome of that game could decide it, but obviously from a USMNT perspective, we really need Venezia to stay up just because of the whole angle. And if they're in Syria next year, I mean, maybe they get one or two more players, who knows? So I think we really kind of have to be pulling for them, but and I think they have the quality to do it. I mean, I think they'll survive.
Juve Champions League? Yes, no. What do you think?
Yes, I'll say yes. I think they finished fourth. And I think, I'd like to see Atalanta maybe make a Europa League run. So maybe that'll be my big take, is that Atalanta's going to win the Europa League and we'll have 5 Serie A teams in Champions League.
Hey,
that would be awesome.
And then, everybody can bring up this video when my prediction.
It doesn't happen.
I'm being positive. I don't want to be. It's a bold, positive prediction. So there you go.
Chris, you got Juve at 5. What about Venezia? Are they up or are they down?
Oh, I think they're going to be up because they have a game in hand, but Napoli kind of ruined it for them because they should have battered Cagliari, but they didn't. So
yeah,
I can't believe it. But can I just say one thing about Venezia really quickly? I think it's been amazing how much minutes both Busio and Tessman got, and I would say that no one predicted that when they were there. I remember seeing so many comments of people saying Busio's not going to potentially get any minutes at Venezia. And then when he started playing, Tessman's definitely not going to get any minutes now. And they both have gotten solid minutes and they've been trusted in different roles. Busio, I would say, can be labeled as a consistent starter throughout the year, right? He started more games than he hasn't started. And he's been playing in a lot of different positions, which has been great, especially against big teams. And Tessman has gotten this role where he sometimes starts, but he also comes in to kind of help close out the game. So Venezia's 1-1, his stature in set pieces, kind of being a physical presence in midfield, holding the ball up, like all those things have been great. And let me also remind you, Jack de Vries in the under-21 team. And he's been doing decently well. So there's a chance he could get promoted up. I also feel like if Venezia don't stay up, I actually think that there's a good chance, based on how they've been playing, that both Tessman or at the very least Busio will get a loan in Serie A. I could easily see a Sampdoria, an Udinese, a Spezia, I don't know, one of the very mid-table clubs, one of those coaches taking a chance on Busio there. I could see it for both, but definitely Busio. So I just wanted to add that.
Juve in or out?
Me, 100. I actually think they're gonna. I think they're definitely gonna be in, because I feel like they're under so much pressure, and I feel like it's a bit scandalous. And I think anyone who follows Serie A, Juve is going to be helped as much as they can by the refs. Trust me, to get into that top 4 spot, because they're they've spent so much money with Vlahovic coming in. If they don't get in the 4th spot, man, it's going to be so embarrassing. But I actually think there's a small chance that they can finish 3rd over Napoli, because I feel like Napoli might lose their plot towards the end of the season. They might sneak into 3rd. They're only 4 behind Napoli.
Yeah, I've got Venezia up as well. I was thinking about putting them down just to take the hot take, but I don't actually think that. I think they will stay up. And I think I'd say Juve finishes 4th. I do think there's 2 kind of like parts of this to me. One is injuries, which I think, Chris, you mentioned, right? Like injuries plus potentially, a mini run here in Champions League, right? I think they will make the quarterfinals, which, once again, presents all of that. Injuries plus quarterfinals and depth concerns, it could hurt them, right? And that could cause them some issues. But I think they're up, and I think they're up because I think Vlahovic is that good, man. He's so good. I mean, he when he was kind of blowing up earlier in the year, I decided to really dig in and watch a couple games, and there's a lot of games different than Holland, but it reminds me of like the Erling Haaland mid-season move to Dortmund, where he just blew up in the second half of the year in a way that was like, whoa, like that guy is unbelievable. And I think we're going to see. I think we're already seeing it, and I think we're going to see that from him. And I think it's going to be a little bit of one of those things where his performance is a big part of carrying them into the Champions League. But hey, gentlemen, let's move on. We got more Serie A to discuss here, but we're gonna head out of the brace now. We're gonna head into extra time. And so here's how this is gonna work. I'm gonna put a minute on the clock, and there's gonna be a horn that blows at the end of that minute. So your time's up. You can try and fit in as much as you can into the last 2 seconds. But you get 1 minute to talk about the topic. We're going to go, in a certain order. We'll go Cal, then we'll go Chris, then we'll go Eldon. And I'll let you guys kind of rock on it. I'll jump in if I have some thoughts on some of your points. But 3, I think, really interesting topics here to talk about. Topic 1 in extra time is going to be if you could take one USMNT player this summer and move them to one Serie A club, what player are you taking? What club are you moving them to? And a short reason why. Cal, what do you got?
Oh man, this is like my favorite topic of all time. God, all right. I'm gonna go with the big dream. I would bring Pulisic to Milan. First of all, I think it would just be amazing for
the big dream or your big dream?
My big dream. But both they're big.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I think he'd be a mark. He'll explode for Milan. They have their left wing back. Leao is amazing. I think Pulisic would be playing on the right hand side. I actually think he can play both sides just as well. But the way Salazmakers, who plays there right now, is exactly the type of position that Pulisic would thrive in. He would be playing with a young team, but with really good players like Tonali and Benacer. There's rumors that Renato Sanchez is going to be going to Milan next season, as well as Botman. They're going to have a really good team that's going to be playing in the Champions League, and they could do a sort of like Ajax run from 3-4 years ago because they're just going to have such good things. That's my dream. Pulisic, 100%, going to Milan and being the starting right wing.
I like it. It's a good one. Chris, what was yours?
All right, mine's a little weird, but
I like weird.
I think that Stefan should go to Sassuolo because they have aging goalkeepers and he needs an edge on Turner, so he should be a starting keeper. And being a starter in Serie A is better than being a backup in the Premier League.
I like
that.
What? How do you feel like you do there?
He'd be fine. Their goalkeepers are pretty bad, so.
And he gets to play in Serie A, which is a good thing. That I'll use a little bit of your time here just to kind of comment on that one. I love that one. And I feel like I always forget about Stefan when I think about potential moves. And he maybe is one of the guys that needs to move like the worst in terms of like us as USMNT next fall. We really need a goalkeeper playing consistently. And I don't think Matt Turner is going to be that guy at Arsenal. So, please, we need him to go somewhere. And I would love for it to be Serie A. Eldon, what do you have here?
So one that I think might be kind of a romantic pick is Tim Weah to AC Milan, where his dad played. But I've thought about this because I know we kind of had the Aronson-Weah debates a little bit, and Aronson was linked with Milan, and I'm not convinced that actually. I mean, one, from a money perspective, I think Milan is looking for money ball deals, and Aronson might get priced out.
Yeah,
and I kind of want Aronson to end up maybe if he goes to Leeds, I don't know. I think Bielsa might be on the way out there, but I could see Aronson maybe going to Leipzig or just doing better in Germany. But I think if you look at AC Milan the last 3 or 4 years, they're the worst kind of part of their attack is the right wing because Salmakers is, yeah. And then they had Samu Castillejo. He didn't do. I mean, there's just a bunch of guys that have just not held up the spot. And I think Weah is he wouldn't necessarily start every game, but I think he could do well at the right wing.
Yeah, and there's a connection with Lille and Milan. I don't know if you guys know this with the owners. So if you look at some recent deals, obviously Leao came from Lille, went to Milan. Mike Magnon, the goalkeeper, went from Lille to Milan. And now, like I was mentioning, the Sanchez and Botman, somehow they're 2 players that I think anyone would want. But according to a lot of transfer pundits, they're looking very likely to go to Milan. There's just a weird connection there between the owners. So that's the only reason why I think it'll be hard to get all 3 players over. But man, I think that right wing is begging to get replaced by a U.S. star.
Hey, first of all, I love Pulisic to Milan. I've said that one for, I feel like, months. I just feel like it's such a great level for him and where he's at right now. I feel like the money thing, similar to what you said about Aronson, could be the problem there as well, though, right? Like, I don't think Chelsea's letting him go.
No, if he's got if he was
light amount.
No, it's absolutely right. If he's playing like he did against Lille a couple of days ago, I mean, he's going to go. Let's just say they bring Hazard back, or they buy somebody else, and they send Pulisic. Somebody's going to have to pay minimum $50 to $70 million. So there's only select teams that can pay that type of money. Milan's not one of them, and Milan would potentially bring him if they got him on a loan with a potential like no buy option, and then try to negotiate one somewhere down the line. But again, I think the max that they would spend would be around 40 million on a buyback clause if he performed well. So it's unlikely, but
yeah, I didn't really have one here, but I just thought of a one that was interesting, and that's just like, I don't know who would need a right back, and maybe that there would be a spot that would open up this summer. But I think Dest would be good in Serie A. I think it's a good style of game for him. I think it's a good level for him. I think honestly, I know his pride would be hurt by going from like Barca to Napoli, but I think that level would be really good for him too right now in his career. I think he'd, still be able to potentially play Champions League depending on which club he went to, plus be I think a locked-in starter if he gets to the right spot where, they have a need there. So that was just one I kind of thought of. Hey, let's jump to topic 2 here in our extra time. Who's the Serie A MVP right now, right? Think of it more of like a traditional American, soccer, football, or basketball, football MVP. If you can name an MVP right now, Eldon, you'll be our first guy. Who is it, and a little bit of why?
So I think that it's a tough question to answer because the title race is so close. Because I think, if we're going to do it in the American sense, it should go to, whoever ends up winning the title, the most important player on that team. So if Inter wins, maybe it's somebody like Barella. I think that would be kind of a safe choice, but he's not like the thing about Inter is that they're probably the most complete team. It's not like last year where Lukaku was scoring 30 goals. Maybe you could say Lautaro, but I said earlier that I wanted Milan to win because of Zlatan, so I'll say Tonali because I think he's been Milan's best player. Maybe not necessarily best player, maybe most important player. I think he kind of makes the team tick. So I'll say Tonali, even though these awards don't go to, central midfielders or defensive mids. But
hey, it's your award though,
yeah,
right?
Why not?
Name it. Cal, who's your
or the goalie?
who's your
listen, I think I agree because I feel like it's who wins. I mean, to me, if Inter win, I would 100% give it to Barella. I think he's just so important for the team. And, as soon as we knew Barella was out against Liverpool, we were like, there's no way we're going to win that game. It's like, that's how important he is. Same way, like we feel about McKennie being out of the U.S. lineup. Like, it's just so impactful. Milan, to me, I think Tonali's been great, but I feel like they've had some heroes all over the pitch, right? Because you could easily say Leao's just been incredible this year, right? Mike Mignon's been great. What's it called? Even Tomori stepped up in certain areas. Giroud's been hot lately, right? So I feel like they don't even have really their own MVP. But if Napoli wins, I can hand in heart say that AUSMNT would win MVP like 1,000,000%. Because they're just, when he's not on the pitch, even when they lost to Barcelona today, he's the person who's running around. He got the penalty, everything. It's hard to do.
I like it.
Sorry.
Chris, anybody different?
Yeah, I got one that wouldn't really hold up to the traditional American version, but Vlahovic, because he basically carried Fiorentina to where they are now, and even without him, they might have a chance to win the Coppa Italia. And with Juve, he
could carry.
Yeah, he carry Juve Champions League,
right? So yeah, that was, you kind of stole mine there. I was going to be like, I didn't think you'd bring that one up, and I was going to say, hey, what about my guy who I just mentioned, right? For 2 clubs he impacted potentially, right? Like, you know, how often do you see something like that? It's like impossible in the American sense. It's impossible, right? Where like, you know, a club like Fiorentina, you know, his impact is like, you know, hey, we're gonna where are they in the table right now? Mid-table, right? Somewhere.
No, they're like 7.
7. Wow, yeah,
And they
like,
can easily.
that's insane, right? Like, so you got them at 7, and then if he impacts, you know, going back to Cal's point, if Juve finishes like 3rd, which isn't out of the question, because of him, and he scores, you know, 15 goals in the second half, like, you know, there's an argument there. But yeah, hey, good one. I think that, you know, it's really interesting. You know, we have these kind of like European-wide awards, and I think there are kind of like footballers of the year, right? In a lot of the European leagues. What is that award for Serie A? Is there?
Yeah, I mean they actually do have an MVP.
They
award.
do.
Yeah, they do.
You're gonna bring up the worst player of the year. That's the joke award.
Yeah, the Il Bidone.
Yeah,
which means the toilet.
All right, hey, let's jump into our third question in our extra time, and our last question in our extra time, and that's transfer of the year. Kind of going back to the summer. Chris, I'll let you kick this one off.
It's got to be Mike Maignan, because Donnarumma left a hole and nobody thought it could be filled. AC Milan were very dependent on him, and they got an excellent shot stopper for a steal price because, you know, the little connection. And nobody expected him to be this good, and now he's getting a lot of shouts to be the first choice of France as well. So,
love it.
Hard to argue that.
Great shout. Cal, why don't you piggyback?
Man, I'll be completely honest. I feel like he took mine because I feel like Mike Maignan was just such a strong purchase. Listen, I think someone else. It's hard to say he was the transfer of the year. I think Hakan in the first part of the season was amazing for Inter, and I think also that was like it was very controversial. He was going from Milan to Inter. He was amazing. I mean, listen, he had a great game against Liverpool, and he's been good. He's a lot more consistent. So I think, and not only that, it was a free transfer, no money. It was an impact right off the bat, walked straight into the starting lineup, and was a lot more influential than Eriksen was. So if he would have been part of like Conte's Inter with Lukaku, they would have been even stronger. So I you know, Mike Maignan, I agree with purchase of the year. But second for me would be Hakan.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Mike Maignan is, I think, just the kind of consensus number one choice. I think if you want to look at other ones, I think what Inter did, just because of all the financial problems they have, I mean, they sell Lukaku for 100 million, and now if you're kind of reading what's happening, he might go back for half that. So that, you know, that's an interesting one. They sell Hakimi, and they replace him with Dumfries, who's a very solid right back for like 15 million. And then they sign Dzeko on a free. I think Dzeko's done well. He's been wasteful as well. But, you know, if you're talking about replacing Lukaku's production, you're bringing a 35-year-old free agent and, you know, you're still top of the table. I think you kind of take that considering what your financial situation was at the beginning of the year.
Well, think about it when Conte was coach, he wanted Dzeko Inter almost got Dzeko. Because he wanted him to be the Vice Lukaku. So when Lukaku was tired, you know, you'd bring in Dzeko for the last 35 minutes. And he, you know, imagine fresh leg Dzeko, clear head. You saw his legs were dying against Liverpool. But at Dzeko, 30 minutes of a game running at you, set pieces, that would have been a really dangerous team. And that's the issue. It's like they bought Caicedo.
Yeah, the other one I just kind of thought of, I think Tammy Abraham has done well. Because I think Roma got him for 40 million. I mean, it seems like they could sell him back to the Premier League for like 75 at some point.
No, they can't. His buyback clause.
Yeah, his buyback clause is 80 million. So if they want to buy him back, it's going to be. But I think he's proving that he's worth the 80 million.
Yeah, he's a good striker.
And unfortunately, Roma is just like not playing well. But otherwise, I think he would be up there if they were more successful.
He was actually going to be my name. I kind of just shouted out here at the end because he's so funny, right? Like he went on loan from Chelsea, was awesome in the championship, came back to Chelsea and actually was pretty good. Like I thought he always produced for them. Really, I never, and I thought he always got kind of a bad rap or was like pulled in and out by, not really given the job by Lampard, and then obviously kind of, put on the boat once our guy TT came in. But like, he's good. I feel like he's pretty young, and he's either, absolutely produced at a really high rate now at every stop. And I would even consider like Chelsea, maybe not a super high rate, but pretty productive for that level. So he's a good player, man. I think he's the kind of guy who's going to, potentially have like a little bit of a Lukaku earlier in Lukaku's career, right? Where he was bouncing club to club, kind of producing in a lot of those spots, had like the Man U stint where he, obviously kind of hit a wall. But I think he goes back to England. I think he eventually goes back to England, and he goes back to a, kind of a right below the top, 5-6 clubs. That's kind of what I see, unless he continues to really blow up. But hey, that was a lot of fun. That's the end of Extra Time. We have just like a bonus segment here because we got, 3 guys who love Serie A. I decided to come up with some Serie A trivia. It's Serie A trivia time, and I've got some good questions for you guys here, I think. So here's how it's going to work. I'm gonna throw the question out there, and all you have to do is just like put your hand like that. That's our buzzer. So if I see the hand fly up, you get first dibs. If you get it wrong, you're out for the question. Somebody else can jump in and try and answer it. We'll keep score here. All right. I think I got like 5 or 6 questions here.
What's the level of difficulty here?
I think the level of difficulty is gettable to
very term.
gettable to very gettable.
All right.
Some being like all 3 of you will know, and it's going to be like who gets the buzzer, fastest.
Okay.
First question. I'm going to define modern era as 1980 and on. We're not going back to like the 40s here, right? So 1980 and on, what player has the most goals in Serie A? Eldon.
I think it's Totti.
It is Totti. You have one, Francesco Totti. All right, 1-0, Eldon. We're going to question 2, same exact era. Which non-Italian player has the most goals in Serie A? Yeah, Cal.
Batistuta.
That is correct. It is 1-0. Yes. Wow. We're 2-0 right now in terms of getting questions right, though. I like it. All right. This is one I think you guys may know. If you don't need to name the year, you just need to name the club, but year for bonus points and to feel like a stud. Who's the last club other than Milan, Inter, and Juve to win the Scudetto? Yeah.
Rome.
Roma in 2000. Bonus points.
It was the 2000. Actually, you said only those 3 clubs, but actually Lazio won in 2000, and then Roma won in 2001.
That is correct. You don't actually get a bonus point, but in your heart you do, It is 2-1-0. I feel like, Chris, you just got to jump in here. I feel like I can see it in your eyes that you had some guesses here on these questions.
He's a young guy. We need to get back into the 2000s.
I feel like you got to go back to when Barry was in the league.
Next 2 might really. I think they're going to hit his sweet spot. Before Ronaldo and Juve broke the record, what was the most expensive transfer in Serie A history? Yes.
I think it's within Christian Vieri. Christian Vieri,
player from wherever.
Oh, okay, yeah, I said Christian Vieri from Lazio to Inter.
No.
90 million.
Nope.
No, that was after Ronaldo.
I think Ronaldo was higher though too. Yeah, Eldon, take a shot.
So this will be a guess. I don't think it's right, but I know Baggio to Juventus was at some point the world record.
That was the world record at one point. I saw like a it was like a year by year what it was. You got a guess, Chris? Throw one out there.
No, I have no clue.
Wait,
if you asked me the British record, then I would tell you that it was David Platt at one point, but no.
Oh,
wait, I'm confused when you said the time though. When is this, before Ronaldo or after Ronaldo?
Before Ronaldo and Juve broke the record.
And it wasn't Vieri from.
This was a Juve. Juve is the club that broke the record.
Yeah,
I'll give you guys a clue, and it was a Serie A to Serie A transfer.
Yeah,
This guy was scoring a lot of goals for his other club, and then he scored a lot of goals for you.
Well, I guess I already lost, but
yeah,
Vialli.
No, I mean
Gianluca Vialli. No,
it was not. It was Gonzalo Higuain.
Higuain, Napoli. That's right. He was 90 million. Napoli.
Yeah,
Damn it.
yep.
Yes.
99.
I thought you were
Vieri
asking.
was third then. Vieri was third. Lazio to Inter must have been.
Yeah,
Hey, we're gonna stay with the same theme, so keep your hat on. I think this one's even more gettable. Before Lukaku broke the record this summer, what was the most expensive export from Serie A ever? This is a big name, and it was a big time transfer when it happened. It was a big deal. I think it broke the world record at the time it happened. Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, I think it might be the Zidane transfer.
No.
It wasn't Zidane to Real Madrid. Wow.
It was well after that. It was 2015-16 range, something like that. This guy has not lived up to the price tag. I'll just say that for club. But to give you a clue,
no, never mind.
He has for country.
Oh, okay.
You got it?
Was it Ronaldo from Inter to Real Madrid?
It was
R9?
It was Mr. Paul Pogba.
Oh, that's right.
That was a gettable one. That was a gettable one.
Yeah. Damn.
All right, and my last one. I think you guys.
Man, we suck.
Yeah, we do.
Transfer prices are tough.
Transfer is not our thing.
Yeah.
Apparently, here pre-transfer we were good. Most expensive transfer pre-2010 in Serie A history. Eldon, I think you hit this one before.
Is it the Zidane one?
It was 80. Yeah. And what's insane? 85 million. Right, Higuain. 14 years later, I think, set the record at 99, but Zidane got bought. Or sorry, Pogba, I think, set the record 115. But Zidane got for 85 million in like 02 or something like that.
Well, dude, think about how good Zidane is, and imagine with that money that they sold Zidane, Juve bought Pavel Nedved from Lazio, Gigi Buffon from Parma, and then Lilian Thuram from Parma. Like that was it's a ridiculous. It was basically Thuram was like one of the best center backs / right backs in the world. Buffon was arguably the best goalkeeper of all time, but definitely during that time, if Pavel and Nedved was a Golden Boot winner, and they got them for
price.
They got 3 players who were all world-class players for one. I mean, Zidane did get Real Madrid the Champions League, but Juve was just an unbelievable team. They kept winning a bunch of Scudettos, but unreal.
What year do we see a Serie A team win the Champions League?
I think the times were when Juve. I think those were that was, but I think in the next
two finals, is that correct?
Yeah, 2 finals. I think those weren't even amazing. That I would be honest, like those weren't even that amazing of teams. Like if you really look, I would say the one that had Higuain at his prime, Dybala in his prime, Mandzukic, still, that team was great, right? With Pogba, Pjanic, Khedira, and it was just a great team. Everyone in. I think it's going to be a little bit longer because the teams need to have depth, and that's lacking.
Next 5 years, thumbs up or thumbs down? Quick poll: thumbs up or thumbs down? Next 5, thumbs down. Chris, Eldon.
Yeah, I think the financial, because basically, I think there's an interesting parallel between Italy and Germany, and so for in Germany, Bayern Munich wins the title every year. It's kind of what Italy had with Juventus, but in order for Bayern to be competitive against EPL teams and PSG and to have a legit chance to win the Champions League, they have to be so much better than the rest of the league, and then you don't have an interesting league. And so, in Italy we have the most interesting domestic league in Europe. But I mean, we're all Serie A fans, but just being realistic, it's tough to see an Italian team win unless they just go on a Cinderella run. I mean.
Yeah,
that can happen.
That's why I agree. I think 5 to 10 years, the teams will have a little bit more depth. Like Milan's building something nice if they can keep their players.
Yeah.
Inter, they're going to bring in maybe like a Scamacca and Raspadori next season. They're building a little bit more depth. And then if you have 3 or 4 strong teams that can make those runs, maybe. But I think to build like a big team that's going to be as good as Man City is every year or as PSG is every year in Bayern. I mean, Juve is the only one that can do that, and they're in straight rebuild. Like they need to rebuild that whole defense. They need to rebuild that whole midfield, and they need Chiesa to be good, fresh, and they need depth basically everywhere. So I think 5 to 10 years, you can feel like there's going to be 4 strong teams that can compete. But even then, it's going to be hard, right? Like, let's not forget, Man City's never won the Champions League. So they've had a good team every single season for the last 8 seasons.
There's like a handful of teams that win Champions Leagues, right? Like
one in Romania.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Red Star Belgrade. This is kind of if you ever want to do Yugoslavia, trivia. Red Star Belgrade won the Champions League on penalties in Bari, 1991. So
with Sinisa Mihailovic, right?
Yeah, he was on the squad. Like the whole team was stacked.
Yeah,
you had Jugovic, you had Prsinečki. So there were like a bunch of players on that team that then went on to play in Real Madrid and clubs like that.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about the Champions League, we kind of have to factor is that I think we'll see a resurgence from Real Madrid because it seems like they'll get Mbappe. They might get Pogba on a free transfer. So I think Real Madrid is going to reload and probably go back to being a serious contender. And then Barcelona has a young team. I don't know. It kind of depends on what happens with their financials, but if they keep this group together, I think you can kind of see Real Madrid and Barcelona, return to going to Champions League finals, before Italian clubs do. Because the one thing that I've always really appreciated about Italy, and I think what makes it, a fun and interesting league, is that Italy has interesting and strong clubs throughout the table. And so I think, even like mid-table teams like Fiorentina, like have a, history and, great players. And I think sometimes in order to like dominate in Italy to be good enough in Europe, it's just, it's a little harder than maybe in Spain, where oftentimes it is kind of a 3 or 4 team league at most. Or Germany's now, even with Haaland on Dortmund is basically, barely a 2-team league. So
2-team league for sure. Yeah. Hey, gentlemen, this has been fun. Thanks everybody for listening. It's been a blast talking about some Serie A with you guys. Just as a reminder, you can find Eldon at Eldon Hasic. It's on the screen if you're watching YouTube. You can find Chris at Football Report. Take out the O. Really, you found Cal at Mr. Calcio Guy and me at Stan AUSMNT. It's been awesome. Appreciate you guys for joining us and putting the time in. And until next time, we'll see you.
See you guys.